Good afternoon, Radford fans and ESPN fans, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk with Rags here in Season 4, Episode 36. And today, here we are honored to have Radford alum and current ESPN broadcaster Marty Smith with us. Marty, how you doing today?
I'm wonderful, brother. I appreciate you having me, and it's been a long time coming, hadn't it?
Yes, it has, and I definitely with having this hobby for 4 years. I mean, definitely having mutual friends here to help you out, and definitely appreciate Mike Ashley here connecting us.
He's a wonderful man, and has had a tremendous influence on my life, not just professionally, but personally. He helped me really sort of shape who I was and who I wanted to be, and open my eyes to a lot of opportunity, and sort of lit my path towards some of that opportunity when I got to Radford. Um, it's a long time ago. I was about to date myself and say in the fall of 1995,
Right.
I had every intention of furthering my collegiate athletic career with Lou Kent and the baseball fighting Highlanders,
Right.
but that wasn't meant to be. I tried out for the team. I had participated at Carson Newman College, now Carson Newman University, the previous season in my freshman year of college, and came over to Radford with an ego-driven assumption that I would just walk right into Radford and play baseball, and tried out for that team. Tried out like shit. It didn't work out very well for me, and didn't make that team. And it's funny in this life, if you are someone who was an athlete, which I was, all growing up in Giles County,
Right.
all three sports. Mark, as you know, where I'm from, it's a Friday night lights town,
Right.
and it's an expectation that you play high school football. It's just something that you're going to do from the time you're 4 years old. You are going to suit up in red and Columbia blue and represent the Spartans and represent that history and that tradition and that identity for our town. And I'm sure we'll get into that shortly, but nonetheless, didn't make that baseball team at Radford, and so here I am with this void. And I don't care if your last high school football game is your last game as an organized sporting teammate, or if you're Tom Brady or Peyton Manning and you play 20 years and you go out winning how you want to, when it's over, there's a void you do not see coming. And that certainly happened to me. And I wallowed in self pity for about 6 weeks.
Right.
I had a buddy who worked for Mike in the Radford Sports Information office, and he was dating a young lady who said to me, "Hey, uh, come on, you're going to come to work with me." And I was like, "I ain't going. I'm not going to go take stats
Right. And
on
report.
somebody. No way." And eventually, as I thought more about it and continued to just be pitiful, I thought, all right, I'll walk in there and see. And I walked in the door, and the first person that I saw sitting there at his desk was Mike. And I said to him, "Hey, man, you don't have to pay me. I want to be a part of something." And as you know, Mark, when you're walking into Radford University Sports Information and somebody says, "I just want to help," and you ain't got to pay me, they're like, "Over there's the damn copy machine. We need 700 copies right now." So I just jumped in there, man, and it wound up being one of those foundation brick blessings for everything that was to follow. And Mike and Dave Hunziker and Lynn Arnold and all of those folks were just integral in growing me as a professional, but more so, honestly, as a person, in those formative years for me.
Right. And then there in the mid 90s, I mean, right across town, Radford doesn't have college football. So, if you go to Radford, you pretty much follow the Hokies, and
Oh
the
yeah.
Hokies, Coach Beamer was just bringing Virginia Tech onto the national stage, and especially when number 7, came from Warwick High
Unreal.
School there to Virginia Tech.
I maintain I've been blessed, brother. I've seen a lot of very good athletes during my 20 some years of covering big time college and professional athletics. Michael Vick was just he was different. And I don't want to go off on too many tangents here, but several years ago, I would think it was around 2017, maybe.
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to go down to Hollywood, Florida, and spend some time with Michael. We played chess together against one another on the beach there where he lives in South Florida. And the reason was, while he was in Leavenworth prison, he desperately needed something to satiate his competitive drive. And he learned that chess was one hell of a competitive arena when he was in that prison. And so he had gotten so good at it that I thought, what an interesting way to try to dive into his story and his journey. And man, was he gracious, not just with his time, but with his vulnerability in that piece. I'll maybe send you a link to it, and you can maybe put it in the notes of your show here. But so the way I got to that place where I was covering that team, it was the fall of 1998.
Right.
And I had, through Mike Ashley and doing all of the statistics gathering and media relations for Radford women's basketball,
Right.
Luby Lykonzak and his team and his program. And then the men's program under Ron Bradley with, Corey Reed and Kevin Robinson and Sheeby Johnson and Eric Parker and all those guys that were the core group that led Radford to their first NCAA tournament appearance ever. And half of those guys were groomsmen in my wedding 24 years ago. They're some of my best friends to this second.
Right.
I rekindled a relationship with Ray Cox at the Roanoke Times. And Ray had covered a ton of Giles High School sports. He covered me in all 3 sports. And Ray offered me an opportunity to be a stringer covering preps for the Roanoke Times. And so off I went. I learned how to write from Ray Cox, covering, some random William Byrd and Jefferson Forest softball game, and or going down to middle of nowhere Grundy to cover a high school football game, and really learned that craft, or started to learn that craft. I'm still learning it from Ray. Well, in that same period, a young lady named Angie Watts, who was a fantastic talent, was at Virginia Tech as a student. And she was the stringer covering the football program, or I guess the whole athletic program, for the Washington Post. And she graduated, and the Washington Post hired her in their, I forget which bureau, one of the bureaus for the Post. Just a fantastic reporter.
Right.
And they had this opening, and Angie was like, well, there's this guy that works with me over here at Roanoke.
Right.
And he's the guy. Go put him in there. And brother, was I over my skis. I mean, I can't describe to you how over at my skis I was. I didn't really know how to report. I didn't know. I felt like I was a decent writer for being so young, but reporting and writing are not the same thing. Yes, they're intertwined, but the understanding of how to cultivate relationships, build sourcing, and everything that it takes to stay on top of news, I didn't have a damn clue how to do that yet.
Right.
And man, I was doing it in a very high pressure scenario. And in that same moment, my mother was very ill. My mom had cancer in that same period. So I was an emotional I was living a difficult time emotionally as well, and it was just a hell of a time in my journey. But ultimately, uh, I look back on it now and realize that the hard, tough love I got from Steve Berkowitz, who was the editor, or my editor at least at the time at the Washington Post, was something I needed, even if it really hit my insecurities at the time. He was also somebody that was one of those people in my journey that made me kind of figure out how I wanted to do this. And so, what an awesome blessing, though, as a kid who grew up going to Virginia Tech games with my father. When Coach Beamer was just laying those foundation bricks for what would become a national brand. And I don't care if you're from Seattle, Washington, or you're from Sunrise, California. By God, you know where Blacksburg, Virginia is.
Right.
And Frank Beamer's the reason.
Right.
And my sweetest memories with my dad live there in Lane Stadium to this day. And I would give anything to be able to go back on one of those crisp October Saturdays right now with my dad and see Brent Pry lead that team. But just a very special place.
Yes. Yeah, and also here with growing up there in southwestern Virginia, I mean Martinsville Speedway is not very far. So, when you got your start here with covering NASCAR there through the Speed Channel, just talk about your experience here with covering NASCAR.
That also goes back to Ray. So when I got that position, so as a young kid, I was a big NASCAR fan. Davey Allison was my favorite driver, remains so to this day. Rest in peace. But when he died in that helicopter crash at Talladega, I was sort of like, I don't know if I'm into this anymore, and sort of stopped paying very close attention to NASCAR. And then when I got the stringer job, for those of you listening who don't know what that word means, stringer is like it is a contract employee that you get basically paid hourly or by piece.
Okay.
To go, you're not an employee of the Roanoke Times. You're kind of like a
Contractor.
Yeah, you're kind of a contractor. And so when I was at Radford for 2 years, I was a stringer for the Roanoke Times. And so anyway, when the high school seasons ended, when baseball ended and track and field ended in the spring, high school sports was over.
Right.
So in the summer of 97, Ray goes, all right, man, here's the deal. You're going to cover New River Valley Speedway.
Right.
And I went, what? He goes, yeah, the stock car races out there at New River. You're going to be the guy. You're going to be the person that covers it every weekend, every Saturday. And I did not want to do that at all. I had no desire at all to cover auto racing. I thought, oh, Lord.
Where's this going?
Yeah, I wasn't interested in it at all. And man, I tell you what, I went out there with a very closed mind, which is something I do a ton of motivational speaking and whatnot now. And I look back on that person in that season of my life, and I realize that I went into that assignment with the exact antithesis of the way I go into every assignment now, which is I'm going to have an open mind and an open heart, a closed mouth and open ears, and learn the beauty of this. Mm-hmm. And when I walked into New River Valley Speedway in August of 97, I was saying bad words in my head. But Lynn and Stephanie Carroll, who so Ronnie Snoddy owned the racetrack back then, and Lynn and Stephanie Carroll ran it for him. And Lynn was the lead steward, rules enforcer. And I walked in there and I didn't know shit from shit. And they held my hand and taught me auto racing. But I'm going to tell you something, man. It wasn't 2 laps into the first late model race that night I kind of was instantly intoxicated by the smell, by the sound. There must have been 5,000 people there on a Saturday night in August at New River.
Right.
And I went, I don't really know what I'm looking at here, but I think I might want to be a part of this. This is cool.
Right.
And then that summer, there was an awesome rivalry between two guys named Philip Morris, who went on to win like 6 or 8 national late model stock championships, NASCAR late model stock championships, and Jeff Agnew. Philip drove the red number 01. Agnew drove it was almost like a cream colored and orange number 26. And those two raced like hell and battling for the championship. And it was just I was like, I might want to do this. So then every Sunday, I'm getting up watching the Cup Series.
Right.
And it was Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace. And I mean, just badass dudes.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, so Lainey and I at that time were dating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, look, and my wife's from South Jersey. That's where I'm sitting right now. All right.
Okay.
I'm like, look, we're going to watch this NASCAR.
Right.
And I realized that summer, hey, man, not only am I really into this, but this is probably my fastest track to the big time.
Right.
Because NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, all of that just seemed like it may as well have been on Neptune.
Right.
For an old boy from Southwest Virginia. And from there, man, I covered it for the Lynchburg News in Advance right out of Radford. And then NASCAR hired me the next year, and it was on from there.
Right, because then in 2006 is when your ESPN career started, and it started out by being a NASCAR NASCAR reporter there with ESPN, right?
The first 8 years. That's right.
Yeah.
The first 8 years at the company. This is now year 19.
Right.
Jeez.
Right.
I can't believe. It's hard for me to think about that. I do love nostalgia. I love the feeling of nostalgia and rekindling those emotions that I felt in those moments of the past. But I don't spend a whole lot of time looking back at those 19 years at ESPN unless I get asked about it, because we live in this on to the next world. Like, I was in Austin, Texas 2 days ago to welcome Texas to the Southeastern Conference. And you know, I have SEC Media Days next week. So it's just that's kind of the way we live our lives. But when I got the phone call in 2006 from Jack Obringer, who was the producer who was recruiting talent, that's the word they use. I think it's kind of a ridiculous word, on-air talent, for their NASCAR broadcast crew, starting in 2007.
Right.
I thought he had the wrong number. I thought he called the wrong Marty. There's a great friend of mine named Marty Snyder.
Okay.
And Marty is a tremendous broadcaster. He's redheaded. He's very fair-skinned. And I thought, I said to Jack, hey, bro, I think you got the wrong Marty. And he kind of laughed, and he's like, no, man. And the reason that they chose me, despite the fact that I had never done TV, yeah, I'd done some like one-off interviews on Speed Channel or Fox Sports or what, but like I had never done TV.
Right.
Where you really have to know how this thing works. He said in that moment, we have spoken with folks in the NASCAR garage, at NASCAR's officials group, their public relations staff, their marketing management staff. And everybody says that you know the drivers really well. You know what's going on in the sport. You have a really good pulse of the garage. And so we need who and what you know. We'll teach you television.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what's that mean? What's that mean? He's like, well, you would be our insider that would break news, report on news, big stories in the sport, on Sports Center. And then as soon as he said Sports Center, he turned into the Peanuts teacher. Wah,
Right.
wah, wah. I was like, wait a minute, man, you're going to hire me to be on Sports Center?
Right.
And so I came home and I asked him, is this a job offer? He said, not yet.
Yeah.
I just want you to consider the prospect. So, I mean, I drove home. At the time, I was driving home with my son, who was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd gone down to Costco in South Charlotte and bought this sheet cake, this birthday cake.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it, man. I walked in the door with this cake, and I said to Lainey, you ain't going to believe this. I think ESPN just offered me a job. And ultimately, and later that year, I did get a formal offer, and I'm somebody who would rather crash and burn and fail, knowing I'm incapable, than be on the back porch 40 years later, drinking a cold one, wondering, you know what? I wonder if I could have done it. I wonder if I could have done it at ESPN. And so 19 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah, and with your career, I mean, you've been covering college football, and then here this past year, you were, there at the Kentucky Derby, and getting involved here with covering major golf tournaments, and not even to talk about your Marty and McGee show, but just your career here at ESPN has just expanded and been full year, all season long.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Just sort of to break down, I guess, quickly for those watching or listening, kind of my year goes mid-July to mid-January is college football.
Right.
99%.
Yeah.
Of my time. That is features for College Game Day. That is reporting for College Game Day. That is the Marty and McGee program that you mentioned there, Rags. My colleague Ryan McGee and I started a little half-assed podcast 11 years ago about country music and NASCAR, and that thing's grown into an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And we just can't really we can't wrap our hands around it. We can't rationalize it. But we're not asking a lot of questions. I will tell you, man, people, especially down south. Now, it's not a regional show.
No.
I'll be in California. I'll be in, we took our kids to Big Sky, Montana for spring break. There's people out there going, I love Marty and McGee. So we're just so full of gratitude that we stuck to our guns and would not change the way we did that particular show. And it's really grown into a great brand and really highlighted both of our careers. And it's just the most fun we have all week long. So that also, we travel around the SEC.
Yeah.
In the fall, we go to the biggest games in the Southeastern Conference every fall and have a pregame show along with SEC Nation, which is kind of College Game Day for the SEC on the SEC Network. So that's so fun. We do that every Saturday all year long. And then after college football ends, I go right into broadcasting college basketball games, into the NCAA tournament with Carl Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes and Jay Billis, Super Tuesday. And then I go right into the Masters tournament and the Kentucky Derby and the NFL draft and the PGA Championship. So it's spring's gotten every bit as busy as fall ever was.
Right.
And so I just look at it like my wonder and gratitude about all of it is ceaseless, because I love the challenge of the diversity. I love the challenge of and the blessing of 1 week I'm interviewing Todd Pletcher in the barn area at the Kentucky Derby about who might do what his prospects are for his horse in that race. And he's catching me up on everything I need to know in order to properly report it on SportsCenter. And then quite literally the next week, I'm interviewing Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau and chasing Scotty Scheffler after he got arrested at the PGA Championship. So it's invigorating. It's a lot of work. I mean, don't get it twisted, man. If you're at ESPN, you're either great or you're gone.
Right.
And so it requires a lot of diligence. And I learned this from Nick Saban. Comfortable has a very distinct way of evolving into complacent. And complacency is the greatest threat to excellence. The second you're complacent, you're bored. And when you get bored, it's just over.
Right.
You can't be great. You can't have passion. You can't be unstoppable and indomitable if you're bored.
Right.
And so I refuse.
Yeah.
I have a very high self-demand for a very high output and a very high quality output. And so that requires great diligence in input.
Yes, and for all the listeners out there, I mean that Marty and McGee podcast and that it started out, went to the SEC network, worked with SEC Nation there during football season. I mean, that is now every Saturday morning.
Yep.
They're a 3-hour program there on the SEC network, right?
Yes, and I will tell you, again, we struggle to understand. We're grateful for the platform, and the platform has only escalated larger and larger and larger because it's grown from this tiny little podcast that I made a cold call to a wonderful lady named Sharita Johnson in the summer of 2013. And I said, hey, I want to do, she ran podcasting, which at the time, I mean, 2013, podcasting wasn't what it is. Now, hell, everybody under the sun's got a podcast now. Right. But I said to her, I would love the opportunity to do a podcast with this guy, Ryan McGee, about racing and about country music and just about Southern culture. And she was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. So she said, let's get on the phone together and you guys just do what you would do. So we got on the phone, and out of nowhere, he and I just started telling Dale Earnhardt stories.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of media left that covered Big E before he died in February 18th, 2001. So we started telling Big E stories. And after like 40 minutes, she goes, okay, yeah, look, I don't know what the hell this is, but you two are brilliant storytellers. we're just going to do it and see what happens.
Right.
Then fast forward a couple years, ESPN Radio had the 3 to 5 p.m. slot on live ESPN Radio on Saturdays.
Right.
Which is like, it's a tough spot.
Right. Yeah.
Not a lot of people listening 3 to 5 on Saturday. People are doing stuff.
Right.
And we were like, we're in, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And it blows up your whole Saturday.
Right.
Because, you're waiting all day to do the show. By the time the show's over, it's dinner time. We were like, we don't care. We're doing it. So we did that for a couple years. And then we got a phone call and said, hey, we're transitioning you guys to 7 to 9 a.m. on Saturdays. And I picked up the phone and called him. And I said, buckle up, son. Yeah. Our lives are about to change. This is the greatest time slot we could have, because it's when I always joke on the show, people are going to get the donuts. They're taking Junior to travel ball. Yeah. All the parents are toting their kids around to different activities. This is the holy grail.
Right.
And then in COVID, they gave us an extra hour, 7 to 10, and we've been 7 to 10 since. So I think one reason that it works too, Mark, is if there is a major sports story, okay? Don't care what the story is. Don't care about the context. One of the two of us is probably there.
Yeah.
Because, we're on SEC Network. Yeah, but we're both national reporters.
Right.
And, for example, both of us are at big college football games, okay?
Right.
I'm at the Masters, the Kentucky Derby, PGA, NFL draft. He's at College World Series, Indianapolis 500. Like one of the two of us or both of us, we're both at Daytona every year. Like we're going to probably be there.
Right.
And so that adds so much credibility to what we're saying. And that's and we just enjoy interviewing everybody. Like we have, not that it matters, we have Tony Vitello this coming Saturday that just won the national title at Tennessee. Can't wait to chat with him. And so people enjoy coming on the show too. So I didn't mean for that to be a Marty and McGee commercial, but there you go.
No, but I mean,
I'm proud of it. I can't help it. I'm proud of
and
that
the thing is here just recently, I saw that you guys had a show at FanFest, with Thomas Rhett and Luke Bryan.
That's the latest iteration. Yeah,
yeah.
So the SEC and the CMA, the Country Music Association, got together and decided that they wanted Marty and McGee to come to CMA Fest, which is this massive week-long festival in Nashville where all these artists play, all the artists do media, they're promoting new albums and tours. And the CMA was like, we're going to give you a set. We're going to give you artists. And I've been blessed over the years. I'm a country music fanatic, and I've befriended a ton of these guys already. And man, we had the best time. And Luke Bryan even said out loud to us, this interview is amazing because it's so different.
Right.
Everybody knows the what. We seek the who within the what.
Right.
We seek the who that ultimately built the what. And the artists really appreciated that. And one thing we've noticed, every year we do what we call Marty and McGee Talking Season at SEC Media Days, where we interview all 14, this year 16 head coaches in the SEC. And that's what really built that platform is we started getting the who with Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, all these guys who rarely share those pieces of themselves.
Right.
And so that also helped really build this thing we're doing.
Yes, and Marty, I mean, just this past spring, going back to Radford and being the keynote speaker at their spring gala. I mean, what does it mean here to not only give back to your alma mater, but then to be part of a keynote speaker of a big fundraiser for the university?
I love Radford University, and I want to see Radford University thrive, and I want to see enrollment go up. I want to see the athletics programs have a great opportunity to be sustainable and successful. And in this season of college athletics, which is so transformative right now, and in so many cases transactional right now, with name, image, likeness, with the transfer portal, with conference realignment. I talk about it until I about run out of oxygen.
Right.
But if the Radford universities of the world, if the small Division I athletic programs want to survive, they have to raise a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they have to lean on people who love the university in order to get that money. And so when Robert Linenberg, Laura Turk, the administrative staff reached out and asked me if I would do it, I said, hey, I'll figure out how to do it. I mean, it was in April, right in the middle of the Masters and the NFL draft and all, getting ready for the Derby. But I didn't care. I made time because I care so much about the university, and my deep love for Radford University now is only deepening because my son's going there in the fall.
Nice.
He'll be a freshman this fall. And I thought it was such a beautiful event. They did a great job. I was so grateful to offer the messaging that I did, and that messaging was very direct. In this new era, y'all better get off your wallets.
Right.
And so I think that it was a record. I think it was a record fundraiser. But for any of you who love Radford out there, let's make sure that we continue to give, because everything matters, for all of our athletic teams, because anymore, that's just where we are. And so I thought it was just an awesome event. It was so fun to see Tommy Lillard be recognized for being such a great man and a lifelong ambassador for the athletic program. And he's transformed and impacted so many lives, just as so many great people who've been devoted to Radford for so long have. And I'm grateful that I got to be there, man. It was a great event.
Well, Marty, I'm sorry for going long, but appreciate your time, because even when we settled on this time, I forgot with Texas and Oklahoma, coming to the SEC on July 1st. So here it is, the summertime. There's really no games, but your job just always one assignment after another, and appreciate your time for coming on Sports Talk with Rags this afternoon.
I'm grateful for you, brother. Thank you for having me and for championing the New River Valley in Southwest Virginia and Radford University. And you and I have so many mutual friends. And I appreciate your passion and the fact that you've kind of built this platform, and I hope that it continues to thrive. So thank you for having me, man.
Sure, you appreciate that. And I know with having the Tennessee head baseball coach and following that College World Series and how that's blown up and gotten more popular, and with Ryan doing the voiceover as the coverage started, especially there with the 2 out of 3 final series.
Well, the guy's, his writing talent is ridiculous. And I mean, he's really carved out a great sort of niche, is the wrong word, because it's not a niche. I mean, it's on the biggest platforms, but the big secret is that he actually writes a lot of copy for other on-air talent to open events,
Right.
because he's just so good at it. And so I'm proud of him. I'm thrilled for him. We've been buddies for 25 years, and we just I always want to see him do very well. And he is I think he would tell you he's far exceeded whatever dreams he ever had in broadcast television. And that absolutely goes for me too, because I never had any dreams until I was in it to be in broadcast. I mean, I'm a writer, man. He and I both are. It's what we do. We studied print journalism. Well, he studied broadcast, but he's a writer. And I studied print journalism at Radford. I was at every Bill Kovarik class there ever was. And so just all this is a dream, and I don't want to wake up.
Right. Yeah. And print journalism. I mean, so you've definitely seen how technology has taken over here with definitely covering sports.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a different world. Like, just the fact that you and I can sit here and do this right now, be able to look at each other real time. And then, the COVID experience made virtual content completely acceptable. And it's and with social media being real time, and it's definitely a different world than it was all those years ago. And you have to make sure that you are versatile, and make sure that you're malleable, and continue to monitor and adjust and evolve, because in every aspect of life, but certainly within this context, it's classic Eckhart Tolle: you evolve or you die.
Yeah. Well, Marty, look forward to Saturday's episode with having Tennessee's head baseball coach on, and definitely look forward to the college football coverage. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Have a great one. Thank you so much.
All right. So that was Marty Smith today. Thank you.